Hey, how you doing? Welcome to the shed. So I think I might have finally found a digital bullet journal setup that actually works for me, and it's been under my nose the whole time because weirdly it's Procreate. Now that probably sounds a bit odd because Procreate obviously isn't a journaling app and it's not a planning app. It's not designed really for productivity. It's none of that. And I think that's been the problem for me with digital planning in general. Like a lot of these apps are super powerful, but they almost feel like another thing to manage. You're not just planning your life; you're sort of managing the system as well. And I don't want that. I just want something I can pick up, open up quickly, write in, organise my thoughts a bit, and move on. And that's where I've been for like the last sort of week or two. I've been using my iPad Mini with Procreate as a bullet journal, and honestly, so far it's been like the best system I've found. Because what I like about it is it's just super simple. I'm old school, sort of Ryder Carroll bullet journal method system in the sense of keep it super simple. I work more or less by the system that sort of Ryder Carroll came up with initially. And that's just worked for me for years. I've been bullet journaling for years. Not every day, I could do more of it. Like I'm talking about notepads here, like physical notebooks and stuff. But with Procreate on the iPad Mini specifically, I'm using layers like Pages. So rather than having to build some complicated notebook structure or use loads of tabs and hyperlinks and templates and all the rest of it, I can just create a layout that works for me. And then I use the layers to keep things organized. And because it's Procreate, it just feels like really freeform. It doesn't feel like I'm filling in a system. It feels more like I'm just using an actual notebook, especially because it's on the iPad Mini. And on that note, no pun intended, but with rock paper pencil, I've had a rock paper pencil screen protector, and I've been using their nibs for ages on my iPad Pro, but on the iPad Mini, it's just golden. Like putting that on has made such a big difference because I'd never sort of use it. I'd never write on it without some sort of screen protector anyway to get that, that tooth, that kind of grip that you get with a pencil. But the rock paper pencil one, is just fantastic. They're on like version 3 now, and it's a bit of a game changer. I love it, and that in combination with Procreate's that the choices of pens that you get, like brushes, let's say, is the game changer for me because where I've used like Good Notes and stuff before, and even Apple Notes, obviously within the Apple ecosystem, you've got like a select amount of sort of brushes. The closest I got to the real thing in terms of and a sort of that felt like a proper pen was their calligraphy sort of pen, and I just couldn't get on with it. And it wasn't. Yeah, you can change the size of the stroke, and I'm talking again, like I'm talking about within the Apple ecosystem, you can sort of change the size of that pen stroke, but you just couldn't do any more than that. And for me, it really comes down to the writing experience, right? Being an illustrator and artist and stuff, it's about those marks that you're actually making. That's what I love, and so being able to find the sort of perfect brush or pen stroke to work within Procreate has been brilliant. So now it makes me want to pick up the iPad and use it because of the writing experience in itself. So you're talking about finding that perfect pen for you that's making those marks. Because like when like I say, I'm a big fan of classic. Like this is the actual bullet journal mini sort of notepad that they do. I'm a big fan of like field notes and stuff, and actual proper journals. But I've never used a biro. Like I shop around to find a pen that I really love to write with, right? So like whatever particular mark it's making, that I want to find that sort of pen that feels right for me. And of course, with Procreate, you can do that. You can even create your own brush strokes and stuff, and create your own brushes. I'll show you how I've set it up and go through it a little bit with you. And yeah, let's get into it. So from the top, here we have iPad Mini, Apple Pencil, Procreate. Right, I've created a little cover page for it, as you can see there, but we can just switch that off. And that's the whole point of this, right, is basically we can have our layers here acting as pages. This is how I'm doing it. So we just switch them off and on as we see fit. So we can turn off YouTube here. there you go, that's disappeared. So you'll see first of all in the background I've got a dot grid because I'm, you know, I love the old classic sort of bullet journal look with a dot grid. I just got into that years ago, rather than it being lined or plain, or but whatever suits your fancy. Yeah. So down here I've got a little group called elements, and I've put the dot grid on there. I've imported, I can't remember where I got it from, but it's just super simple, free. Got this little dot grid, and I've imported that, and plus I've given it a slightly sort of creamy background. I didn't want the bright white, just sort of dulled it down a bit with the background. Easy to do in Procreate, and that's on there. So that's this layer here. I've duplicated it there, but it's basically this layer here I'm pointing to, and I've locked it, right? So I can't write on that or anything like that, you know, or erase it or whatever it might be, and that's permanently on. So that's in a little group I've called elements, because in there I've also added some type, right? So that is my type layer, and I'll just duplicate that every time I want to sort of include a new page, daily log, weekly log, whatever, and I'll show you those in a minute. I'll duplicate that, I'll call it whatever I want to call it, and then I'll rasterize it, so you know it becomes, and it's uneditable then. But I keep this type layer there all the time, so I can just duplicate it for whatever headers I want to use, right? So we're going to minimize that group for a minute. Let's, yeah, so as you know, as you might know with Procreate, anytime you just pinch like that, it just fills the whole screen. So that's super easy. And while we're on that, 4 fingers just gets rid of all of the UI. And this is what I love about it, you know. And then if you want to bring it back, you just tap up here. But with 4 fingers, or whatever, however you want to set it up to use, whatever your preference is on that, double tap, whatever you want to do, it gets rid of all that UI, and then you can just write, okay? So we're going to need that though. First of all, back here, let's jump into, say, I don't know, ideas capture. So this is a group as well. And if I turn that on and make sure that I'm on that layer, I'm now in my ideas capture page, and I've got my pen selected. This is the one I'm using at the moment. It's called Bronze Wing. It's part of the Procreate library. I went through several of these to find the one that I really loved. And this is what I love writing with. So yeah, here we go. Just show you what I mean. A bit of a weird angle here. Testing out Bronze Wing pen. And I don't know if you can hear that, but that, it's just, I mean, you know, it's not like it's writing on glass, right? I've got, like I said, I've got the rock paper pencil screen protector version 3 for the iPad mini. I've got that on here, and it's just beautiful, man. Along with this nib, the rock paper pencil nib, metal as it is, it's just lovely to write with, you know. You just get such lovely marks, and you can play around with this to your heart's content and find the pen, the brush that works for you, right? So anyway, that's where we're at. So that's the ideas, and above it I've got this little highlights page or layer, and you can turn that off, obviously, on and off. And how I use that is I'll choose another I'm using Centurion as a highlighter at the moment. So say I wanted something in red, just make sure I'm on the highlights layer, and then, you know, if I want to sort of, oh, actually it picks up the wrong color there. Yeah, but say we go with red, you know, I use like a sort of a traffic light system, if you like, red, amber, green, for sort of priorities, things I want to get into, whatever. You know, you can just literally highlight like that. I tend to have that layer on multiply. You know, you can obviously change it, and it's going to affect, as you can see there, it's going to affect how opaque it is, you know, the transparency. You can, you know, play around with this, whatever suits, but I just have it on a multiply layer, or multiply sort of mode. And then yeah, that's good to go. And you can obviously turn that off if you don't want that at all. That's just a little preference of mine. Obviously the thing with Procreate, right, it's just, you know, 2 fingers just undoes everything. So it's a piece of piss to use, and that's why I love it. So I'll quickly show you around another little thing. So say I wanted to turn off ideas capture, and then maybe like weekly review, turn that on, highlight that, and now I'm in another page essentially, right? So they're layers, but I'm using them as pages. And then, yeah, we can sort of go through, I can look at each week as I'm doing it, you know, review what worked, what I can improve on, review my quick capture ideas, process anything that I want to put into Notion, that kind of thing, right? So again, you know, you can really make your system work for you. It's however you want to do it. And if you're someone who's really into the classic sort of Bujo, you know, bullet journal way of working, where you love drawing and bringing in elements like whatever to make it more artistic and more beautiful and fancy, you know, it's not my bag, it's not my cup of tea. I like to keep things super simple. But if that's your thing, then of course Procreate's the perfect place for doing that. You know, it's just so adaptable and versatile and flexible that you can do all that within Procreate. So let's just close this group down. I tend to group these at the moment. This is how it's sort of looking. So what you're looking at now is April, and then within that I've got April tasks. So that's what you're essentially looking at. So with that on, you know, I tend to split this into professional and personal. It's just a matter of preference and etc. So that's my sort of overview of April, and I can expand that or whatever as necessary. If I turn that off and turn that off, minimize it if I want to. So think of these groups, they're just like folders, right? That's all it is. And so as ideas come to me, yeah, I'll just jump into this page and whack them down, you know. I've got a projects page or group folder, if you want to call it that. And yeah, just a couple of projects at the moment I'm working on, and I'll add to that as time goes on. What else? We've got a little YouTube group here for my YouTube channel, and under that I've got a strategy, you know, what's my content about, etc. And then a YouTube ideas page as well. Yeah, and you know, but you can just do whatever you want with this. You know, you can add as many groups, folders, if you like, if you want to call it that. You are limited to how many layers you can use. I think I've got this set up at like 300 DPI or something, which I don't need to do. It doesn't need to be super high res or anything. I'm probably not going to print anything out from here, although I may do at some point. But I think that limits me to about 52 layers. But the thing is, with the monthly sort of group, I'll be doing like what Ryder Carroll sort of does and migrate tasks over into the next month. So I don't need to keep duplicating, you know, every month. Basically, what I'm saying is I'm not probably never going to run out of layers, right? And even if you were using a proper notebook, you'd end up running out of pages at some point anyway. So yeah, so that's just a really quick overview of how I use Procreate as a bullet journal. I've actually created a template based on this exact system. You know, it's on Gumroad. I'll leave a link in the description if you want to check it out. But just to give you a quick overview of it here, it's everything I've been showing you a minute ago that I've been talking through. There's a little quick guide on there that talks you all through it and stuff. We can, yeah, as you'll see, there's a key and everything. So, and also with the font, there's just one thing worth mentioning, because with the font that I had before, I like the font Felt English, but that doesn't come readily available with Procreate. So I've stuck to Poppins here. So if you do want to download the template, you're good to go with the fonts. You can get up and running straight away. Like you'll see that some of them are, for instance, like if I turn this off, monthly log, this here, turn that off. Yeah, so on this layer here, for instance, you would just be able to change that month to whatever, you know, whatever you wanted, January, whatever it was, you know, April, whatever. So yeah, it's customizable like that, which was the whole sort of point of it, really. So anyway, yeah, that's on Gumroad if you can't be bothered to set it all up yourself. And yeah, check it out, have a look. And the other thing that's made a massive difference, like I say, it's the actual writing experience. Because, you know, writing on glass with an Apple Pencil can feel pretty shit. It's obviously slippery and disconnected. It's not satisfying at all. But having that grip, that resistance with the screen protector and the nib, yeah, it feels like you're writing in a proper notebook, you know, rather than just tapping around at a shiny screen. And the iPad mini is just a big part of that as well, because it actually feels like a notebook. It's small, it's light, it's just easy to grab, pick up and use. Doesn't feel like I'm sitting down at a workstation to plan my day out. It's just way more casual than that, and that really matters for me, because I've realised that the best planning system isn't necessarily the cleverest one. You know, it's the one you're actually going to use. It's the one you're going to just go back to time and time again, and that's the issue I've had before. I've tried systems that look great in theory, but I just couldn't be bothered with them after a while. You know, too many features, too much setup, too much structure. Whereas this, because it's so simple, I'm just coming back to it all the time. See, this isn't going to be for everyone. If you want like searchable notes, loads of integrations and calendar syncing, if you want links between pages, proper planner features, reminders, all that sort of stuff, Procreate is probably not going to be the answer for that. You know, it's not built for that. So I'm not saying this is the ultimate productivity setup, like it isn't. But if you're someone who likes writing by hand and you like visual flexibility, you don't want to feel like your planner is another job in itself, then this might actually be worth trying, especially if you're a creative person. Because I think a lot of creatives don't always get on with the rigid productivity tools. They can feel a bit too corporate, like a bit too boxed in, like too over designed. And sometimes you just want a blank space that lets you think, right? And that's what this feels like to me. It's just a blank canvas that I actually want to use. So yeah, I'm still early on with it. I'm not pretending I've cracked some perfect life system after a week, but I do think this is the most promising digital bullet journal setup I've found for myself so far by a long way. And that's why I wanted to talk about it, because I've genuinely spent a lot of time trying to find something that works And this is the first thing that feels like simple but flexible enough and enjoyable enough that I might actually stick with it. So if you've been struggling to find a digital journaling or planning system that like doesn't feel overcomplicated, maybe have a look at Procreate. It sounds weird, but honestly, it might work better than you think. And as an added bonus, there's no subscription, right? You just buy Procreate out of the box, and that's it. I think we're all getting a bit of subscription fatigue at this point. Procreate doesn't have that. You just buy it, and you can adapt it to suit in your own way. But yeah, for now, this is the first digital bullet journal setup that's like properly clicked for me. And I hope it does for you too. Let me know in the comments, is this something that's working for you? Do you use Procreate as a bullet journal or a planning system? Or have do you just prefer the more structured ones if you're using them at all? Or do you just prefer pen and paper? Which I've absolutely got nothing against. I'll still use pen and paper. I'll still take a field notes or one of the smaller notebooks out and about with me to sort of capture ideas and thoughts on the fly, and then transfer them back into the iPad later on. And then probably from the iPad, the stuff that really needs to get doing, if it's creative projects and stuff, it will go into like Notion, where we get like proper digital. Let me know in the comments. It'd be good to hear from you. Till next time, see you later.